The twin suns of Ivaris Prime cast long shadows across the crystalline sands of the ancient dueling grounds. Kira Thaler stood motionless, her obsidian blade glinting in the fading light. The weight of expectation hung heavy in the air, as thousands of Dravari spectators held their breath. Their champion, undefeated for 7 cycles, faced her most formidable opponent yet. General Varric towered before her, his cybernetically enhanced frame adorned with the ceremonial markings of the High Command. His presence alone had silenced the usually raucous crowd. Even the acid winds that typically howled across the frontier world's surface seemed to pause in reverence. "The terms are set," announced High Counselor Sarah Valden, her voice carrying across the arena. "Victory by surrender or incapacitation. The blood oath binds the defeated to the victor." Her amber eyes settled on Kira. "Champion Thaler, do you accept these terms?" Kira's violet gaze remained fixed on her opponent. "I accept." Her voice betrayed no emotion, though her mind calculated a dozen opening strikes. "General Varric, do you accept these terms?" The general's lips curled into a confident smile. "I accept, and I anticipate collecting my prize." The crowd murmured. Everyone knew he referred to Kira herself. By tradition, the blood oath would bind her to him as both consort and weapon should she fall. "Aye, then let the grand conclave duel commence." Syra struck the ceremonial gong, and the barrier fields surrounding the dueling circle pulsed into visibility. Varric wasted no time, launching himself at Kira with terrifying speed. His vibroblade hummed as it sliced through the air where she had stood mere moments before. But Kira was already moving, her body flowing like liquid shadow around his attack. She had not earned her title through brute strength. The Dravari warrior caste valued precision, discipline, and the ability to exploit an enemy's weaknesses. And Kira had studied Varric for years. His first offensive flurry drove her back, each strike powerful enough to shatter bone. The crowd roared as Varric pressed his advantage, backing Kira toward the barrier's edge, but those who knew her best recognized the calculated retreat for what it was. "You fight well for someone who has spent the past cycle collecting accolades rather than scars," Varric taunted, his blade coming dangerously close to her face. Kira didn't respond. Words were wasted energy in combat. Instead, she watched his movements, noting how his cybernetic right arm telegraphed his strikes a fraction of a second before they came. When she finally counterattacked, it was with devastating precision. Her obsidian blade slipped past his guard, scoring a line across his chest plate. Before he could recover, she had circled behind him, striking again at the junction where flesh met machine. Varric growled, spinning to face her with renewed fury. "First blood to you, Thaler. There won't be a second." The duel intensified, their blades creating a lethal dance that few could follow with untrained eyes. Minutes stretched into an hour as neither warrior yielded ground. The crystalline sand beneath their feet had been sculpted into sweeping patterns by their movement, a testament to the battle's ferocity. Kira felt her muscles beginning to burn. Varric's enhancements gave him endurance beyond natural limits. This was his strategy. Outlast her. Wait for fatigue to slow her reflexes. It had worked against countless opponents before. But Kira Thaler was not like the others. When Varric launched his next attack, she didn't evade. Instead, she stepped into the strike, using his momentum against him. Her blade found the seam in his armor where the neural interface connected to his spine. With a precise twist, she disabled the enhancement, and half his body went momentarily rigid. The crowd gasped as Varric stumbled, struggling to maintain his balance. Kira pressed her advantage, each strike now targeting another cybernetic junction point, one by one. His enhancements faltered. "Yield!" she commanded, as her blade pressed against his throat. Varric's eyes burned with hatred and something else. Respect. "I yield," he said, the words torn from him like a physical wound. The arena erupted. Kira Thaler had defended her title once again. High Counselor Syra approached, carrying the ceremonial blood oath chain. "General Varric, by the ancient laws of the Dravari Order, you are bound to champion Thaler. Your blade, your blood, your loyalty are hers until she releases you or death claims you." Varric knelt, his jaw clenched so tight it seemed his teeth might shatter. "I offer my fealty to champion Kira Thaler. My blade is her blade, my blood is her blood. My loyalty is absolute." Kira accepted the chain, wrapping it around her wrist as tradition demanded. The crimson metal seemed to pulse with each beat of her heart. "I accept your oath, General Varric. Rise as my sworn." The ritual complete, Kira turned to leave the arena. The celebrations would continue long into the night, but she had never participated in them. Her victories brought her no joy, only the knowledge that her position was secure for another cycle. "Champion Thaler!" A voice cut through the crowd's roar. "I challenge you!" The spectators fell silent, turning toward the source of the interruption. A figure stepped forward from the diplomatic section of the stands, removing a formal cap to reveal features both familiar and alien. A human. Whispers rippled through the arena. Humans were rare on Ivaris Prime, their soft features and rounded ears marking them as outsiders. This one wore the uniform of Earth's vanguard, the military branch of their interstellar diplomatic corps. "State your name and purpose," Syra commanded, clearly displeased by the breach of protocol. "Lieutenant Marcus Cole of Earth's vanguard." He stepped into the dueling circle, ignoring the warning glances from the arena guards. "And I challenge Champion Thaler not by blade, but by oath." Kira narrowed her eyes. "Explain yourself, human." Marcus met her gaze unflinchingly. "The blood oath you just accepted binds you to General Varric. Yes? I challenge you to break it." The crowd erupted in outrage. The blood oath was sacred, inviolable. To break it was to forfeit not only honor, but identity itself. "You mock our traditions," Kira said, coldly. "You know nothing of the Dravari way." "I know enough," Marcus replied. "I know that you're more than a weapon to be wielded by the strongest hand. I know that the greatest warrior of the Dravari deserves to choose her own path." Varric stepped forward, his hand on his blade. "This human insults our entire society. Let me end this. Champion." Kira raised a hand to stop him. "No, by tradition, any challenge must be heard before the conclave." She turned to Marcus. "You have until tomorrow's first sunrise to withdraw your words. If you do not, the council will decide your fate." With that, she strode from the arena, her mind turbulent with questions she had never before allowed herself to consider. The council chambers echoed with furious debate. Kira stood at the center, surrounded by the 12 elders who governed Dravari society. Marcus Cole stood beside her, seemingly unperturbed by the hostility directed his way. "This is unprecedented," Elder Jorith declared. "A foreigner challenging our most sacred tradition. He should be executed immediately." High Counselor Syra raised her hand for silence. "While I share your outrage, we must observe proper procedure. Lieutenant Cole, explain the purpose behind your challenge." Marcus stepped forward. "I represent Earth's interests in this sector. We seek alliance with the Dravari. but we cannot ally ourselves with a culture that enslaves its greatest minds and warriors through ritual combat. It is not slavery, Kira interjected sharply. It is honor. The blood oath is freely given in defeat. Is it? Marcus turned to her. If the only choices are oath or death, is that truly freedom? Varric, standing at the edge of the chamber, laughed darkly. The human speaks of things he cannot understand. Our ways have preserved Dravari society for 10,000 years. And how many of your best and brightest have been lost to these rituals? Marcus countered. How many innovations stifled because a brilliant mind lost a physical contest? The chamber fell silent. This was dangerous talk, the kind that had led to civil wars in the distant past. Sira spoke carefully. Lieutenant Cole, while we respect your right as a diplomatic envoy to question, you cannot expect us to dismantle our social order at your suggestion. I don't, Marcus replied. I only ask that Champion Thalor be allowed to consider her oath. If she truly believes in it, she will uphold it. If not, he shrugged. Then perhaps it was never valid to begin with. Enough! Kira's voice cut through the chamber. I have never broken my word, and I will not start now. The blood oath binds me to General Varric. This is our way. Sira studied her for a long moment. Then what do you propose we do with this human who seeks to undermine our traditions? Kira met Marcus's gaze. There was something in his eyes, not mockery or arrogance, but a genuine belief that he was right. It unsettled her more than she cared to admit. By tradition, one who challenges without cause must either face exile or combat. She said finally, since Lieutenant Cole clearly has no wish to duel, exile is the only option. No, Marcus said firmly. I invoke the right of instruction. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The right of instruction was an ancient clause, rarely invoked, allowing an outsider to request training in Dravari ways before judgment was passed. You surprise me. Human, Sira said. Few outsiders know of this right. I've studied your culture extensively. Marcus replied, I believe in understanding before judging. Sira turned to Kira. As the challenged party, it falls to you to accept or refuse the right of instruction. Kira should have refused immediately. This human clearly sought to undermine everything she stood for. And yet, there was something compelling about his challenge. No one had questioned her path in years. All had simply accepted her dominance. I accept, she heard herself say. Lieutenant Cole will train under my supervision for 1 lunar cycle. At its end, the council will render judgment. Varric stepped forward, rage evident in every line of his body. Champion, this is my decision to make. Kira cut him off. Unless you wish to challenge it formally. The threat hung in the air. Varric had already lost once. Few survived a second defeat at Kira's hands. As you wish, he said finally, bowing stiffly. But remember, champion, you are bound to me now. Your actions reflect upon my honor as well. As the council adjourned, Kira caught Marcus watching her with an unreadable expression. Meet me at the Eastern Training Grounds at first light, she told him coldly, and be prepared for pain. The Eastern Training Grounds lay empty in the pale light of dawn. Ancient stone pillars, worn by centuries of acid winds, formed a natural arena bordered by the crystalline desert. Kira waited, her obsidian blade planted in the ground before her. As she meditated on the day ahead, she heard Marcus approach long before he reached her. Humans moved so loudly, their breathing uncontrolled, their footsteps unbalanced. You're late, she said without opening her eyes. The sun just crested the horizon, Marcus protested. First light was 17 minutes ago, on Ivaris Prime. That's when day begins. She rose fluidly to her feet, retrieving her blade. Lesson 1. Precision matters. Marcus nodded, accepting the rebuke. What would you have me do first? Champion? Kira assessed him. The human wore a modified version of his uniform, adapted for training. He carried no weapon. First, understand what you're challenging. She began to circle him slowly. The blood oath isn't simply tradition. It's the foundation of our society. When defeat comes, as it eventually must for all warriors, the oath ensures that strength and wisdom are preserved, not wasted. It ensures that the defeated serve the victor. Marcus countered, That doesn't sound like preservation to me. Kira's blade flashed out, stopping a hair's breadth from his throat. Marcus didn't flinch. The oath is reciprocal, she said, withdrawing her weapon. The victor gains a sworn ally but also assumes responsibility for their well-being and honor. General Varric is now mine to command, but also mine to protect. And if you commanded him to walk into an acid storm, he would do so. Kira confirmed, but I would be diminished by such an order. The strength I gained in victory would be wasted. Marcus considered this. So there are limits to what you would ask, based not on morality but on utility. The distinction you make is a human one. Kira replied, For the Dravari, utility and morality are inseparable. What preserves our collective strength is moral. What diminishes it is immoral. She tossed him a training blade, duller than her own, but still capable of inflicting pain. Now, show me how humans fight. Marcus caught the weapon smoothly, suggesting more experience than his diplomatic status implied. I should warn you, I'm not representative of human combat skills. I expect not, Kira said. Begin. What followed surprised her. Marcus fought not with the chaotic aggression she had observed in other humans, but with disciplined economy. His style was unfamiliar, lacking the ritual forms of Dravari combat, but effective. He clearly understood the principles of leverage and momentum. After disarming him for the third time, Kira paused. You fight well for a diplomat. Marcus retrieved his blade, rubbing his wrist where her last strike had numbed it. Vanguard officers receive combat training regardless of their primary function. We believe understanding warfare helps prevent it. An interesting philosophy. Kira reset her stance. Again, they trained until midday, when the heat became too intense even for Kira's acclimatized physiology. As they walked back toward the settlement, she found herself curious about this human who had disrupted her ordered existence. Tell me, Lieutenant Cole, Marcus, he interrupted. If we're to train together for a cycle, you might as well use my name. Kira hesitated, then nodded. Marcus, then, tell me why Earth's vanguard sends diplomats who challenge sacred traditions. He smiled slightly. That wasn't in my mission briefing, if that's what you're asking. My assignment was to establish diplomatic relations and assess potential for alliance. Then why risk offense? Marcus was quiet for several steps. Because I've studied your history. Kira, the Dravari were once explorers and innovators, the first species in this sector to achieve interstellar travel. Your medical techniques were centuries ahead of other civilizations. And then, the Sundering Wars, Kira finished for him. 5 centuries of civil conflict that nearly destroyed us, after which the blood oath system was established to prevent further strife. Marcus added, I understand the historical context, but systems designed for crisis aren't always ideal for peace. Kira stopped walking. You think we live in peace? Evaris Prime is a frontier world, surrounded by powers that would subjugate us if given the chance. Our warriors, our blood oath system, are all that stand between the Dravari and extinction. Or advancement, Marcus countered. When was the last major technological innovation from Dravari society? The last scientific breakthrough? You've been static for almost a millennium, while other species surge ahead. His words stung because they echoed thoughts Kira had quietly harbored. The isolation of the Dravari was a choice made by the Council generations ago, but its consequences were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Perhaps, she said finally, there is wisdom in stability that humans, with your constant change, cannot appreciate. Marcus nodded. Perhaps. Or perhaps there's a balance to be found. They resumed walking in silence, but Kira found her thoughts unsettled. It was not a feeling she welcomed. Days turned into weeks as Kira continued Marcus's instruction. She taught him the formal combat forms of the Dravari, the philosophy behind their dueling traditions, and the complex hierarchy that governed their society. In return, he shared insights about human cultures and the broader interstellar community from which the Dravari had isolated themselves. Your stance is still too wide, Kira critiqued, circling Marcus as he held the seventh form. It leaves you vulnerable to sweeping attacks. Marcus adjusted, his muscles trembling with the effort of maintaining the position. Sweat dripped from his brow despite the cool morning air. How much longer? A true Dravari warrior can hold this form from sunrise to midday, Kira said, allowing herself a small smile at his discomfort. Then it's fortunate I'm not aspiring to be a Dravari warrior, Marcus replied, but he held the position. Kira found his determination admirable. Few outsiders had ever devoted themselves so completely to understanding Dravari ways, even if his purpose was to challenge them. Enough, she said finally. You've earned a rest. They sat together on one of the ancient stone pillars, sharing water from Kira's flask. The twin suns had risen fully now, bathing the crystalline desert in prismatic light. May I ask you something personal? Marcus ventured after a while. Kira tensed. Personal questions were rare among the Dravari, who valued action over introspection. You may ask. I may not answer. Fair enough, he nodded. I've watched you train, fight, instruct, but I've never seen you with friends. Do you have companions outside of combat? The question caught her off guard. I have sworn allies, fellow champions I've fought alongside. That's not what I asked. Kira looked away, her gaze settling on the distant horizon where acid clouds gathered. Friendship is a luxury for those whose position is secure. As champion, I must always be prepared for challenge. That sounds lonely. It is. Necessary. But even as she said it, memories surfaced, memories she had long suppressed. There was someone once. Lyriel. We trained together as initiates. What happened to her? Him, Kira corrected. Lyriel was different. He questioned traditions, much as you do. He believed the blood oath system could be reformed without being abandoned. Her voice softened. He challenged an elder champion when we were 16 cycles old. He wasn't ready. Understanding dawned in Marcus's eyes. He was killed? Kira nodded once, her jaw tight. I watched it happen, could do nothing to stop it. That day, I swore I would become champion, not just to honor his memory, but to reach a position where I might someday influence the council. And have you used your influence? No, Kira admitted. Once I achieved the title, I found myself bound by the very traditions I had once questioned. The path to champion leaves little room for reformers. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry about Lyriel. He sounds like he was important to you. He was my heart brother. Kira said simply. The closest humans might understand is twin. The admission cost her something, acknowledging a connection she had denied for years. Yet, strangely, speaking of Lyriel to Marcus felt right, as though her old friend would have approved of this human with his dangerous questions. Before Marcus could respond, a horn sounded from the settlement. 3 long blasts, the signal for assembly. Kira rose immediately. The council calls. We must return. They hurried back to find the settlement in turmoil. Warriors gathered in the central plaza, their voices raised in argument. At the center stood Varric, his expression thunderous. What happens? Kira asked a fellow champion. General Varric claims the human is corrupting you. The warrior replied, He has called for an honor council to review your actions. Kira's blood ran cold. An honor council could strip a champion of title and status if they were found wanting. She pushed through the crowd to where Varric stood with several council elders. What is the meaning of this, General? Varric turned to her, his cybernetic eye glowing fiercely. Champion Thaler, how kind of you to join us. I was just explaining to the council how this human's influence has led you to neglect your duties. What duties have I neglected? Kira demanded. Those to me, Varric said, coldly. By the blood oath, you are bound to strengthen my position, yet you spend your days training the very human who seeks to undermine our traditions. High Counselor Syra stepped forward. Champion Thaler, is this true? Have you neglected your obligations to your sworn? Kira felt Marcus tense beside her, but gave him a warning glance to remain silent. I have fulfilled my obligations under the blood oath. General Varric has received all honors due to the sworn of a champion. If he feels otherwise, he is welcome to specify what I have failed to provide. Your loyalty, Varric spat. You entertain this human's seditious ideas. I instruct him in our ways, as is my right under the right of instruction he invoked. Kira countered. If listening to his perspective constitutes sedition, then perhaps our traditions are more fragile than we claim. Murmurs spread through the crowd at her bold words. Syra's eyes narrowed. You walk a dangerous path. Champion! I walk the path of the Dravari warrior, Kira replied. With honor and truth. Varric laughed harshly. Fine words. Prove them. The next conclave is 7 days hence. I demand that you demonstrate your loyalty by dueling champion Tovak. He pointed to a massive warrior on the edge of the crowd. And when you defeat him, you will execute him as tradition allows. Gasps echoed across the plaza. Execution was permitted after victory, but rarely enacted, usually only for the most grievous offenses. Tovak has committed no crime. Kira protested. There is no honor in such a death. The honor is in your obedience. Varric countered. Unless you admit that the human's words have swayed you from our path. It was a perfect trap. If Kira refused, she would confirm Varric's accusations. If she accepted, she would be forced to kill a fellow champion who had done nothing to deserve death. Before she could respond, Marcus stepped forward. I invoke the right of substitution. Another murmur ran through the crowd. Syra looked skeptical. That right applies only to bloodkin or sworn allies. Human. You are neither to Champion Thaler. He is my student under the right of instruction. Kira found herself saying, by ancient precedent, that creates a bond sufficient for substitution. She was stretching tradition to its breaking point, and everyone knew it. But there was a kernel of truth in her words, enough that Syra hesitated. I will consider this claim, the High Counselor said finally. Until then, the challenge stands. Champion Thalor will meet Champion Tovak at the next conclave. She fixed Kira with a penetrating stare. And we will all see where her loyalties truly lie. As the crowd dispersed, Marcus turned to Kira. I'm sorry. I've made your position worse. No, Kira said quietly. Varric did that. He knows what he's doing, forcing me to either betray my principles or my oath. She looked at Marcus with new understanding. This is the contradiction you spoke of, the flaw in our system. What will you do? Kira's violet eyes hardened with resolve. I will find a third path. Come, we have much to discuss, and little time. The next 7 days passed in a blur of preparation. Kira trained harder than ever, pushing her body to its limits. But it was not combat training that occupied most of her time. It was deep study of Dravari law and tradition, searching for precedents that might offer a way out of her dilemma. Marcus proved an invaluable ally in this research. His outsider's perspective allowed him to see connections and possibilities that Kira, steeped in tradition, might have overlooked. Here, he said late one night, pointing to an ancient text. The Codex of Renval, from before the Sundering Wars. It speaks of the warrior's final prerogative, the right to reject an oath that violates one's essential nature. Kira read the passage carefully. This hasn't been invoked in centuries. The council might not even recognize it. Yeah, but it exists, Marcus insisted. And it establishes that even in your oldest traditions, there were limits to what could be demanded under oath. They worked through the night, building a case that would either save Kira's honor or destroy it completely. On the day of the conclave, the arena was filled beyond capacity. Word had spread of the unusual challenge, and Dravari from across the settlement had come to witness the outcome. Kira stood in the preparation chamber, donning her ceremonial armor piece by piece. Marcus waited nearby, concern evident in his eyes. It's not too late to reconsider. Yes, it is, Kira replied, securing her vambrace. The path is set. Oh. Then let me take your place. That's why I invoked substitution. Kira shook her head. Sarah rejected your claim, as we knew she would. This is my burden to bear. She paused, looking at him directly. But I thank you for offering. It was very Dravari of you. A faint smile touched his lips. High praise indeed. The call came for Kira to enter the arena. She took a deep breath, centering herself as she had before countless duels. But this time was different. This time, victory would not be defined by combat alone. Marcus, she said quietly, whatever happens out there, know that you have honored your mission. You have shown me another perspective, as true cultural exchange should. Before he could respond, she turned and strode into the arena. The crowd roared at her appearance, the sound washing over her like a physical force. Across the dueling circle waited Tovak, his massive frame tense with anticipation. High Counselor Syra performed the opening rituals, but Kira barely heard the words. Her focus had narrowed to what must come next. When the gong sounded, Tovak charged forward with surprising speed for his size. Kira met him halfway, their blades clashing with enough force to send sparks flying. The duel began in earnest, both champions demonstrating why they had earned their titles. Tovak fought with power and precision, each strike calculated to break through Kira's guard. But she was faster, more fluid, slipping around his attacks like water around stone. For nearly an hour they battled, neither gaining decisive advantage. The crowd watched in awe as the duel became one of the most evenly matched in recent memory. Even Varric, watching from the council's platform, seemed impressed by the display of skill. Finally, Kira saw her opening. Tovak overextended on a thrust, leaving his side exposed for a fraction of a second. Her blade darted in, drawing a line of blood across his ribs. Before he could recover, she had circled behind him, her weapon at the back of his neck. "Yield," she commanded. Tovak froze, then slowly lowered his blade. "I yield to Champion Thaler." The arena erupted in cheers. Kira had won, as everyone had expected. Now came the moment Varric had engineered, her loyalty test. Sira approached, carrying the ceremonial execution blade. "Champion Thaler, by right of victory, Tovak's life is yours to claim. General Varric, as your sworn, has requested this demonstration of your loyalty to our traditions." Kira accepted the blade, its weight unfamiliar in her hand. She turned to Tovak, who knelt before her, head bowed in acceptance of tradition. The arena fell silent, every eye fixed on Kira. She could feel Varric's expectant gaze, Marcus's concerned one, Syra's evaluating stare. She raised the blade high, sunlight glinting off its polished surface. Tovak didn't flinch, a true warrior to the end. Then, in one swift motion, Kira turned and plunged the blade into the sand beside Tovak, where it stood quivering. "I reject this demand," she announced, her voice carrying across the stunned arena. "And I reject the oath that would compel me to kill without cause or honor." Gasps and shouts erupted from the crowd. Varric stormed forward, rage contorting his features. "You betray your word, the blood oath! Cannot override my warrior's final prerogative." Kira cut him off. "By the Codex of Renval, which predates even the blood oath system, I invoke my right to reject an oath that violates my essential nature." Sira stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "The Codex is ancient history, Champion Thaler. Its provisions are not recognized in modern Dravari law." "Then perhaps they should be," Kira replied. "Our traditions were meant to preserve our strength, not diminish it. What strength is there in killing a worthy champion simply to prove loyalty to a system that demands blind obedience?" The crowd was in tumult now, some shouting support, others calling for Kira's punishment. Varric drew his blade. "This is treason! The human has poisoned your mind!" "The human has reminded me of what I once knew," Kira countered. "That true loyalty comes from choice, not compulsion. That honor lies in doing what is right, not what is merely traditional." She turned to address the entire arena. "I stand before you as champion still. I have not betrayed the Dravari. I seek to lead us back to our true path. We were once explorers, innovators, seekers of knowledge. We isolated ourselves after the Sundering Wars out of fear. But that fear has become a prison of our own making." "Enough!" Varric roared. "Guards, seize the traitor and the human!" But before they could move, another voice rang out. "Hold!" High Counselor Syra raised her hand. "Champion Thaler invokes ancient law. By tradition, the council must deliberate before judgment is passed." Varric turned on her in disbelief. "You would entertain this heresy?" "I would follow proper procedure," Syra replied firmly. "As all Dravari should." She addressed the guards. "Escort Champion Thaler and Lieutenant Cole to the holding chambers. The council will convene immediately." As Kira was led away, she caught Marcus's eye. He gave her a slight nod of respect, perhaps even admiration. Whatever came next, she had taken her stand. For the first time since Lyriel's death, she had chosen her own path rather than the one laid before her. The holding chamber was austere, a single room with 2 stone benches and no windows. Kira sat motionless, her mind replaying the events in the arena. She did not regret her choice, but the consequences loomed large in her thoughts. "They'll be deliberating for hours," Marcus said, breaking the silence. "The legal precedent you cited is complex. They may not recognize it at all." Kira replied, "I may have thrown away everything for nothing." Marcus sat beside her. "Not nothing. You stood by your principles. That's never nothing. Principles don't shield against exile or execution. Do you truly believe they would execute their champion?" Kira considered this. "No. More likely they'll strip my title and banish me. A fallen champion is a powerful warning to others who might question tradition." They lapsed into silence again, each lost in thought. Finally, Marcus spoke again, his voice softer than before. "I never told you why I really challenged your oath." Kira looked at him questioningly. "I've studied Dravari history extensively," he continued. "Your people's achievements, your philosophy, your potential. When Earth's vanguard sent me here, they expected a routine diplomatic mission, establish contact, assess alliance potential, report back. But what I saw was a society trapped in amber, preserving the form of greatness while losing its essence." "And you appointed yourself our savior?" Kira asked, a hint of her old sharpness returning. Marcus laughed softly. "Hardly. I just saw something in you, even before we met. The reports described the undefeated champion, the perfect embodiment of Dravari ideals. But I watched recordings of your duels. You never killed when you could spare. You fought with precision rather than cruelty. Even in victory, there was something in your eyes." "What?" Kira asked when he paused. "Loneliness," he said simply. "The same look I've seen in the eyes of every great person who stands apart from their society. I thought perhaps you might be the catalyst your people needed, if only you could be freed from the constraints binding you." Kira was silent, absorbing his words. There was truth in them, uncomfortable though it might be. "You took a great risk." "Worth taking," he replied. "Even if they exile us both." The door opened before Kira could respond. A guard entered, expression grim. "The council has reached its decision. You are summoned." They were led to the council chamber, where all 12 elders sat in a semicircle. The room was otherwise empty, no spectators, no other champions, not even Varric. This, more than anything, told Kira how serious the situation had become. Sira gestured for them to stand before the council. "Champion Kira Thaler, Lieutenant Marcus Cole, we have deliberated on today's events and the precedent you invoked." Kira stood tall, prepared for the worst. "The Codex of Renval is indeed part of our heritage," Sira continued. "Its provisions were set aside, not abolished, after the Sundering Wars. Therefore, your invocation of the warrior's final prerogative has legal standing." A flicker of hope rose in Kira's chest, quickly tempered by caution. "However," Sira's voice hardened, "your public rejection of the blood oath has created a dangerous precedent. General Varric and others demand your execution for treason against Dravari tradition." Marcus tensed beside her, but Kira remained still. "The council finds itself divided," Sira admitted. "Some see wisdom in your words, others only threat. In such cases, our law provides only one recourse: exile." The word hung in the air, heavy with finality. "Champion Kira Thaler, you are hereby stripped of your title and banished from Ivaris Prime. You may take only what you can carry. You will depart within 1 day's cycle and may not return unless summoned by unanimous council decision." Kira had expected this, yet the reality of it still struck like a physical blow. Everything she had worked for, fought for, gone in an instant. "And the human?" she asked, surprised by how steady her voice remained. "Lieutenant Cole's diplomatic status protects him from our justice." Syra replied, "He will be escorted to his vessel and ordered to depart our system immediately." Marcus stepped forward. "I request permission to transport the former champion aboard my ship. Earth would welcome her knowledge and skills." Syra considered this. "Granted, it makes little difference where an exile goes, so long as they leave our world." The formalities concluded quickly after that. As they were escorted out, Kira found herself numb, unable to fully process what had happened. A lifetime of dedication ended in a single day. "Are you all right?" Marcus asked as they walked back to their quarters to collect Kira's belongings. "No," she answered honestly. "But I will be." The truth was that beneath the shock and loss, another emotion was stirring, one Kira had almost forgotten. Freedom. For the first time since becoming champion, her path was not predetermined. The thought was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. They had almost reached their destination when a figure stepped out of the shadows ahead. Varric. His hand rested on his blade, his expression murderous. "So the council spares you," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Typical weakness, but I am not bound by their hesitation." Kira's hand moved to her own weapon. "The council has pronounced judgment, General. To defy it would make you the traitor. I serve a higher law, the preservation of our ways against corruption." His gaze shifted to Marcus. "This human has done what our enemies never could, turned our champion against us. For that alone, he deserves death." He drew his blade in one fluid motion, lunging not at Kira but at Marcus. Despite his diplomatic training, the human would be no match for a Dravari general. Kira moved without thinking, her own blade intercepting Varric's a hair's breadth from Marcus's chest. The impact sent shockwaves up her arm, but she held firm. "Stand down, Varric," she commanded. "You cannot win this fight." "Perhaps not," he snarled, "but I can ensure you leave Ivaris Prime with nothing but regret." He attacked again, his cybernetic enhancements giving his strikes terrible power. Kira parried each blow, but found herself driven back. She had defeated Varric once before, but then she had been rested, prepared. Now, after the duel with Tovak and the emotional toll of the council's judgment, her reserves were depleted. A misstep on the uneven ground cost her precious balance. Varric's blade slipped past her guard, slicing across her side. Pain flared, hot and immediate. "Kira!" Marcus shouted in alarm. She recovered, pressing her free hand against the wound as she reset her stance. "Stay back!" Varric laughed, circling for another attack. "The great champion bleeds. How fitting that you fall not in honorable combat, but as a traitor in the shadows." "There is no honor in your attack," Kira replied, her breath coming shorter now. "Only wounded pride." "Enough talk!" Varric charged again, his blade a blur of lethal intent. What happened next occurred so quickly that later, Kira would struggle to reconstruct the sequence. As she braced for Varric's attack, Marcus moved, not away from danger, but toward it. He grabbed a fallen branch from the ground and thrust it into Varric's path. It should have been useless against a Dravari warrior, but the unexpected interference disrupted Varric's timing just enough. His blade caught in the branch rather than Kira's flesh, and in that moment of imbalance, Kira struck. Her obsidian blade found the seam in Varric's armor, sliding between his ribs with surgical precision. Not a killing blow, She aimed to incapacitate, not execute. Varric staggered, his cybernetic eye flickering as damage feedback cascaded through his systems. "You should have finished it," he gasped, collapsing to his knees. "No," Kira said firmly. "That's the difference between us. Varric, I choose when to kill and when to spare. That choice is what makes me Dravari, not blind obedience to tradition." The sound of approaching guards reached them. Someone had heard the commotion and raised the alarm. "We need to go," Marcus urged. "Now." Kira hesitated, looking down at Varric. Despite everything, he was still Dravari, still her responsibility in some sense. "He'll live," she decided, noting the nature of his wound. "And he'll have quite a story to tell the council about how the exiled champion spared his life twice." They hurried away, Kira leading them through back paths toward the landing field where Marcus's vessel waited. Her wound burned with each step, but she pushed through the pain. There would be time for healing later. The Earth vessel stood alone on the field, sleek and alien compared to the angular Dravari ships surrounding it. Marcus activated the entry sequence, and the hatch slid open with a soft hiss. "Welcome aboard the Horizon," he said as they entered. "It's not luxurious, but it's home." Kira looked around the compact interior with interest. Human design emphasized function differently than Dravari aesthetics, favoring curves and hidden compartments over the stark symmetry she was accustomed to. "The medical bay is this way," Marcus continued, leading her down a narrow corridor. "We should treat that wound before we break atmosphere." As he helped her onto the examination table, Kira found herself studying his face. There was concern there, but also something else, a quiet certainty that they had done the right thing. "You risked your life," she said as he gathered medical supplies. "Varric could have killed you easily." Marcus shrugged, cleaning her wound with practiced efficiency. "Some things are worth the risk." "Such as?" He paused, meeting her gaze directly. "Helping someone find their true path, building understanding between cultures, challenging traditions that have outlived their purpose." A slight smile touched his lips. "All very noble-sounding reasons that my superiors would approve of." "But not your real reasons?" Kira guessed. "Let's just say I also had some personal interest in seeing you freed from an oath that would bind you to someone else." He applied a sealing agent to her wound, the cool sensation immediately dulling the pain. Before Kira could respond, alarms blared through the ship. Marcus rushed to the cockpit, Kira following despite his protests that she should rest. "They've activated the perimeter defense grid," he explained, sliding into the pilot seat and initiating launch sequences. "Someone doesn't want us leaving after all." Through the view screen, Kira could see Dravari guards converging on the landing field, led by a familiar figure. "Varric," she said grimly. He recovered quickly. "Can they prevent our departure?" she asked, strapping herself into the co-pilot's seat. "They can try," Marcus replied, his hands dancing across the controls. The ship hummed to life, repulsors engaging with increasing intensity. "Hang on, this might get rough." The Horizon lifted off with a lurch, throwing Kira back against her seat. Outside, energy weapons fired, several bolts glancing off the ship's shields. "Shields at 80%, Marcus reported, his voice calm despite the situation. "Nothing to worry about yet." He guided the ship upward at a steep angle, accelerating hard enough that the inertial compensators struggled to keep up. Kira felt the pressure building in her chest, a strange but not unpleasant sensation. More weapons fire lanced around them, but they were climbing too fast now for accurate targeting. Within moments, The crystalline landscape of Ivaris Prime receded beneath them, giving way to the upper atmosphere and then the star-flecked blackness of space. "We're clear," Marcus announced, easing back on the acceleration. "No pursuit detected. I think we're officially exiles now." Kira gazed out at the vista before them, endless stars spreading in all directions, possibilities as numerous as the lights scattered across the void. Her home world, already dwindling behind them, looked beautiful and fragile from this distance. "Where will we go?" she asked. "Earth is an option," Marcus replied, "or any of a dozen colony worlds where your skills would be valued. The choice is yours." The choice is yours. Such simple words, yet they carried profound weight. For the first time in her adult life, Kira's path was not dictated by tradition or obligation. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I think I would like to see these other worlds you speak of, to understand how different peoples live without the blood oath." Marcus nodded. "A journey of exploration, then, very fitting for a Dravari, if your ancient histories are any indication." "Yes," Kira agreed, feeling something long dormant awakening within her. "My people were explorers once. Perhaps it's time to reclaim that heritage." They sat in comfortable silence as the ship accelerated away from Ivaris Prime, each lost in their own thoughts. Eventually, Marcus engaged the autopilot and turned to her. "What will you do if the Council ever summons you back?" he asked. Kira considered this. "I don't know. The Dravari are still my people, despite everything. If there were a way to help them find a better path, perhaps your exile itself will spark change." Marcus suggested. "Your stand in the arena, people will remember that. Questions will be asked." "Perhaps," Kira said, though she wasn't convinced. Traditions as entrenched as the blood oath did not change easily. "And what of you, Marcus Cole? Will Earth's Vanguard welcome you back after you've essentially kidnapped an alien warrior?" He laughed. "I completed my mission. I established contact and assessed alliance potential. The fact that I'm bringing back a first-hand cultural expert is just exceeding expectations." "Is that what I am to you? A cultural expert?" Marcus's expression grew serious. "You are Kira Thaler, former champion of the Dravari, who chose her own path when tradition demanded otherwise. Whatever else you become is entirely up to you." There was promise in those words, promise and possibility. Kira found herself looking forward to discovering what might lie ahead, unbound by oath or expectation. As the stars streaked past the view screen, Ivaris Prime now just another point of light among thousands. Kira felt a strange peace settling over her. She had lost her home, her title, her place in society, yet somehow she had found herself. "I think," she said slowly, "I would like to learn more about these Earth customs you mentioned, the ones that value choice over obligation. I'd be happy to teach you." Marcus replied, "Though I should warn you, humans are even more contradictory than Dravari. We preach freedom while creating our own invisible chains. Then perhaps we have more in common than either of us realized," Kira observed. "And perhaps, between your perspective and mine, we might find a better path for both our peoples." Marcus smiled. "I'd like that." The ship continued its journey into the unknown, carrying with it two people from vastly different worlds who had each, in their own way, chosen to break with tradition in search of something more meaningful. Whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together, not bound by oath or obligation, but by mutual respect and shared purpose. And for Kira Thaler, once the greatest champion of the Dravari, that was enough. More than enough. It was freedom,